Bang. I'm Ajay Yohann. Have any questions or just want to tell us what an amazing job we're doing, you can reach out to us at 6364252164. Now let's jump right into it. Today's topic is about Independence Day. And indeed, we have a special guest for the show, Mr. Iype. It's indeed a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Yohann. Yeah, my pleasure.
So, for this edition of the Reality Bang, Mr. Iype and I will be having a discussion regarding Independence Day and give you guys a better viewpoint of this topic. So, my very first question to Mr. Iype is gonna: why is Independence Day specifically celebrated on 15th of August?
Well, I'm talking about something that I haven't witnessed. I
Okay.
I born much after 1947, and I'm sure that all of you are listening are also the same. Uh, we haven't seen India under the rule of Britishers, so it's history for us. The facts that we know is from the history books or what people have told us. But then there was a time when Britishers were ruling us, which means they made the rules. They had the legislative sovereignty. They could decide who is going to rule and what will be the rule in our country. Now, there was a change in 1947, August 15th. At that day, that authority of making rules or the authority to govern this country has shifted to legislative assembly that was there at that time in India. So that's simply saying that the authority is being transferred from Britishers to a legislative assembly in India. And then, of course, Prime Minister was now Jawaharlal Nehru. He raised the Indian flag there, and some few lakhs of people witnessed that. All that is there in the history. So basically, we can decide who will rule us. And that's what happened on the Independence Day. And that is something that we celebrate every year.
That's indeed a very good history lesson. So, moving on to the next question now, how did the British East India Company establish control of India, and what were the initial consequences for the Indian population at that point of time?
Okay. Um, East India Company, as the name indicates, it was a company. We know that if you make a company, the main purpose of that company is to do some business or produce something and make profit.
Yeah.
Okay. No company is intended to make loss. Their intention is to make profit. So East India Company was a company to produce or make profit. Profit by trading things. Now, international trade now is very different. But during that time, there were no preservation. Like today, we have refrigerations. We can
Yeah.
mm, we can keep things for a longer period. Then we can also export and import fruits because it will not happen on a ship. It happens on the flight. So within 8 hours or 12 hours, the fruit will reach anywhere. So it can be used. But those days, the transport was on ship. So the things that they need to transport, it's on the ship, and it should be only things that they can preserve will be transported from one place to another. Okay. Now, in the 16th century, 15th century, during that period, even 17th century, during that period, industrial revolution was happening, and they wanted in Europe they wanted coal, which was the petroleum of today. Okay, and India was rich in coal. Not only in coal, there were a lot of other things that were so precious in the West. If you think of the Silk Route that was happening from China to Europe, it went through India. It reached Arabian countries like Oman, and from Oman it was taken to Europe. So the things like sandalwood or silk, ivory, all those things were taken by those people on the route. So it was a good business. So East India Company, they made this company, and it was the queen at that time who was the head of their state. She signed it and sent this company to make profit in India. And they came here. When they came here, Mughals were actually ruling in Delhi, and they made a deal with him, and they started doing business. Now, uh, when we say all this, Indian independence and Britishers ruling India and all that, one thing that even history books don't tell us, they conveniently keep quiet about it. Of course, our land was called India, but it was not one country. When you come to Maharashtra, someone else ruling there. Okay, if you go to, for example, Andhra, someone else was ruling there. If you go to South Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Karnataka, different small countries and kings were ruling. Okay,
Yeah.
so East India Company, they started making deals with these people, and they started buying things and exporting it to their country, and thus they were making profit. But then at that time, there was also a problem of security. If you have money, you need security. If you have wealth, you need security. So they started building up. See, I'm cutting short, I'm not giving the details. They
Yeah.
started making security measures so that their wealth and their people will be protected. So they had army to protect them. So their army became so strong because they were becoming an economic power within India. So
Exactly.
they became so powerful that they could actually defeat some of these small kings. If they wage war, no, British East India Company and their soldiers were more powerful than these small countries and their army. So they started conquering them. Or to some kings, they said, "You give us money, we will protect you." Okay, so king
Yeah.
did not have a good army. They did not have good weapons. Okay, so British East India Company said, "We will provide that. We will give you protection. Don't worry about making an army. We will do that for you." So they fell for it. Okay, so later, whatever they say, they have to obey because they have the guns. They could call the shot. We say, those who have gold make the rule. That time, those who had guns, they made the rule, and that's
Exactly.
how slowly East India Company conquered the entire country. And they are the ones who made India as one country. When they conquered all these countries, what happened is from Pakistan to Bangladesh, okay, and from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, it became one country. So Britishers have done that. Okay, they divided it also. That is a later part. That is a later story. But they made India as one country, and they
Of
conquered
course.
it.
Of course. Now, like when we look at history, we know there was a revolt that took place back in 1857. Now, what exactly was the significance of this revolt, and why is it, referred to the first war of Indian independence?
Hmm. Now, when this revolt happened, it was not the word independence struggle was not at all there in our vocabulary. Okay, it came much later.
Hmm.
In fact, the that revolt that happened in 1857 is actually known as the Mutiny of Sepoys. That's what Britishers called it, and that was known. It was known like that only. Only after the independence movement, Jawaharlal Nehru called it as the first independence struggle or struggle, and then later the Quit India movement. That was the second independent movement. Okay. Now, what happened at that time was that Britishers were having soldiers from India. They
Yeah.
recruited Indian soldiers, but they did not treat them very well.
Hmm.
So that caused some unrest and dissatisfaction among them. And then there was a revolt against the Britishers. It happened in UP, that area, okay, next to that Ganges River. There was a man by the name Pandey, Manish Pandey, I think. Yeah, he was the leader. Later, he was hanged by Britishers. He was given capital punishment. But then he he started this mutiny, revolt against the British rulers, and it was actually a bloody affair. It's very
Yeah.
sad, actually. What has happened is some 6,000 British soldiers were killed. Britishers. Okay, so that's a big news. Oh, 6,000 Britishers got killed, and it became a big news in England. So Queen got involved, and the government and all the people started making a big hue and cry. Our people went there and they died and all that. But the other side of it, 8 lakh Indians died. Okay, this mutiny was dealt brutally by the Britishers.
British. Yeah.
They showed no mercy. They just killed them. 8 lakh people died. Okay, it was a very sad story. It did not accomplish anything. Of course, in the history book, we can say that is first independence struggle and all that. But nothing happened. Can't say nothing happened. Britishers took some decisions. Number one, that's the end of the rule of East India Company. From that day onwards, British monarch became the authority of India. She is the head of our state also, our country also. Okay, so British said, we will rule. We will send some representatives and they will rule. That's number one. Secondly, Britishers made sure that this kind of mutiny will not happen again. It happened because there was dissatisfaction, and these dissatisfied soldiers came together. So they made sure that the army is being divided properly, and they are under the authority of British soldiers and officers. Okay, that decision also they have done. Then they also realized that if Indians, the locals, if they stand together, they don't stand a chance. See, 6,000 against 8 lakhs. It's even if they have weapons, it's a difficult situation. So what
Yeah.
they decided is that let's divide and rule. That's where they got that idea. They started dividing the country. See, the first division came in Bengal division. It was a huge thing. There was a lot of opposition to that and all that. So the Britishers said Bengali speaking diaspora is so big. There's some 78 million at that time. Okay, they said it's impossible to do the administration, so we are dividing. But the fact of the matter is that maximum rebellion came from Bengal. Okay, so they said if you leave them together, they speak the same language. See, in West Bengal and in Bangladesh, they speak the same language, right? So
Yeah.
they were divided, like Bernard Shaw once said about Britain and America. No, two countries separated by the same language. Same case here. West Bengal and East Bengal divided by the same language. So that's why they divided. Okay, so they were then they also injected religion into it, which became very evident later in the second independence struggle. Yeah, these are the main things that happened because of the main. I would say the effect of the first struggle of independence in 1857.
Now, of course, we know like multiple movements took place back in the day, like the Swadeshi movement, the Gadar movement, and the efforts of the Indian National Army were started for India's freedom. Now, how did all of
Huh.
this contribute to achieving independence of India? Because like a lot of things
Oh,
took place. So
okay. Yeah. See, again, this is the problem because we live more than 70 years after this independence struggle. So for us, it's history, and we think that all these things happened at a time and things like that. But
yeah,
actually, that's not true. We were talking about few movements, uh, the Swadeshi movement is there, the Gadar movement is there, and of course, Indian National Army. The Gadar movement was happening on the early stages of the 20th century. It happened maybe 1914 or something. If you remember the world history, that's the time of First World War.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, during that time, some people wanted to go to Canada from India, and they took a Japanese ship. And when they went there, they did not allow them to board there, and they sent them back. So the Indian diaspora who were in Canada and in US at that time, not many, they came together and they started a movement, and that also injected the national feeling. Basically, majority of them were Punjabis, Sikh community. So they said we will have some revolt against Britishers' rule in India, because they felt that Britishers did not help them. Okay, so that was a movement that happened during the First World War, but actually they did not accomplish much. Uh, they were trying to get help from other countries to defeat Britishers, so that India will become receive get its independence, and they can rule by themselves. They had big hopes, but that did not work. Now the second similar movement happened, which is called Indian National Army by Subhash Chandra Bose. Now this happened during the Second World War. We know that World War is not just a war between two countries, two sets of countries. Look at the Second World War. It was Britain, America, Russia, then then France. All these countries were one side. Japan, Germany, Italy, they were on the other side. There are other countries also, but these
Yeah.
are the two groups of countries. They were fighting with one another. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose, who was also a nationalist, he wanted to liberate India from the Britishers. So there is a saying, no? The enemy's enemy is our friend. That is a
Yeah.
principle that Subhash Chandra Bose looked at. He said, see, Britain is in a war against Germany. They are at war with Japan. So these two countries can be our friends, because our struggle is against the Britishers. So he tried to mobilize military support from both these countries, from Japan and also from Germany, so that by battle, by waging a war, a physical war with Britain, we will receive independence. But then, that's the time Mahatma Gandhi was in the freedom movement, and he worked with Congress, and his main policy was non-violence. Non-violent person will not fight in a battle, whether
Yeah.
it's a world war or a civil war. No, he will not fight. Gandhi said, no fighting. We will not take any weapon to free India. We will stick to non-violent methods. So that was against Indian National Army's view. They wanted to fight and liberate India. Gandhi said no. So what happened? See, actually what Gandhi did is the right thing, because even if you would have fought, again, what you remember what happened in the first independence? 8 lakh people died.
Yeah.
So many people would have lost their life, and it would have been a disaster. So Gandhi actually saved many lives in India. Okay, forget if I look at Gandhi, and I don't. I'm not saying that because of Gandhi we got independence and all that. I have difference of opinion, but it's a different thing altogether. But because Gandhi took this stand, he saved a lot of life in India. So many Indians did not lose their life because of Gandhi. Okay, but there were struggles when Gandhi was not going for this violent mode of rebellion, Britishers also couldn't do much. If there is a rebellion, they can oppress, they can use force, but they couldn't. Nothing is happening. But Subhash Chandra was trying something else. So that is basically the difference between these two movements. But then Gandhi started another movement that is called Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement is that we use things that are made by Indians in India. We say no to the things that are brought by Britishers, so that we will use. See, what Britishers were doing is they'll take raw material from here, make something good, okay, because they have factories and technology, and bring it back and sell to us. And actually, it's our raw materials. They take it and sell it back to us. So it was a kind of an exploitation. Okay, so
Yeah.
Gandhi said we will stop that by just avoiding to buy things that are brought by Britishers. So that was the Swadeshi movement, and that was quite successful.
Okay, so of course, after all of this, we finally gained our independence. Now, independence has become a very important thread in Indian history. So, now, how do you think the youth can contribute to preserving the values of independence?
Independence means you are not able to decide for yourself, right? Someone else
Pretty
takes
much.
decisions for you. Okay. So, um, you know what is right. And if you are not able to do what is right, you don't have the independence.
Yeah,
That's independence. Okay. That defines freedom. Freedom doesn't mean that you are free to do anything. You have the right to do what is right. That is
yeah,
freedom. Okay. So, in that aspect, we have political freedom. Like we can choose who will rule us. When Britishers were here, that choice was not here. Britishers will decide who will rule us. They will appoint a viceroy and he will make the legislations and all that. But now it's not like that. It is our duty. So, politically speaking, we should be actively contribute to the democratic system here. When I say democratic system, uh, actively contributing means that don't look at any of don't look at the candidate and which party he belongs or which caste or religion he belongs. Instead of that, think whether this person can represent me uh, in the legislative assembly for good. And
yeah.
accordingly, you vote. I think that's the best way to do. That's the best way that we can protect our freedom. But then there's another thing. That is, see, you look at these people. Britishers. Before that, it was Mughals and other kings. Some of them were very good. Some of the rulers were very good, and some of them were very oppressive and exploiting. Okay. See, actually, you can see that in the history. For example, in the Bible, the first liberation story is that of Israelites from Egypt. Okay, when Israelites went to Egypt, they contributed to them. They contributed to their well-being. They contributed to in a big way. Just think of the story of Joseph. He actually saved the country. But then
Yeah,
Egyptians turned around and started oppressing them and exploiting them. Now, when you start exploiting a group of people, it's easy money and comfort for you. But the problem is when they cry out of their despair, God hears. God will not forget those who are oppressed forever. If you are
exactly.
using, uh, if you are using, oppression or your muscle power to oppress someone, to exploit someone, don't think that you'll be able to do it forever. So you look at all these countries. It, it has happened. They tried to do it for some time, but then God did not allow that to continue. In this case of Israel itself, there was the kingdom, David, Solomon, and the kings were there. And later, those kings, they became oppressive. Maybe the last or the second last king in Judah, Jehoiakim. At that time, Babylonians became great power, and Babylonians attacked Jerusalem and took some as captive, but they did not destroy the city. But then, after some, Jehoiakim was a vassal king. He made some agreement with Nebuchadnezzar. But after
Yeah.
some time, he thought, okay, forget about the agreement that I made with Nebuchadnezzar. I'll make a treaty with Egyptian king so that I can rebel against Nebuchadnezzar. For that, he had to pay a lot of money to
Yeah.
Egyptian king. So you know
Egyptian
what he
king.
did? He taxed the people. Common man in the country had to pay a heavy tax for what? Just for the pride of the king.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also read that with that money, he gave money to the king in Egypt, and with that money, he is modifying his palace. While people are living in poverty and people are don't they are not having enough for themselves, this man is using money for himself. See, God removed that king also. In fact, in the book of Jeremiah, we read that about Jehoiakim, he will have the death of a donkey. So, whenever we look at this independence movement and one regime is removed and someone else has come to power, which we have seen, in the recent years, many countries, some
Exactly.
people were ruling it for many years, and all of a sudden there was an uprisal and they were thrown out. It all boils down to oppressing people, exploiting people. So when we have any authority, when we are in a position, don't try to oppress people, don't try to exploit them. See, we think that if I exploit him, if I oppress him, who's going to ask me? Now, that's the most dangerous situation. Because if he cannot ask or question us, if there is no one to question us, God will take his case.
Exactly.
Okay. God is a God of who are oppressed, who are marginalized, who are exploited. And that is going to destroy the ruling class. It has happened in the history. You see this happening throughout the history. The only thing is we don't learn from the history. So
Yeah.
uh, when we
Yeah.
look at independence, we are proud to be born in an independent country. All those things are true, but it also tells us that all those who were in authority, whenever they abused power, it's a matter of time that they will be brought down. God hates those who oppress, those who are helpless.
Exactly. So that was a very, very beautiful history lesson given by Mr. Iype Cherian. A huge thank you to Mr. Iype for joining us for today's show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that officially brings us to the end of today's show. A huge thank you to our listeners for joining into this edition of the Reality Bang, your weekly dose of youth power, brought to you by Feba Online. And that's it. If you guys want to contribute to our topics or have any questions or just want to tell us what an amazing job we're doing, you can reach out to us at 6364252164. And remember, guys, we air on Mondays at 4:30 p.m. That said, this is RJ Yohann. Hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you next Monday. God bless you.